I'm Lion Runner at Reviews and Revisits on Instagram and YouTube. This is my video essay and review of Godzilla Minus One. When the movie originally came out a few months back, when it originally showed up in the United States for in the theaters, I was not very interested in it. What happens with Godzilla movies, or what it's been for me over the years in the '90s when I was an adolescent? I would see these movies. I would see the older ones from the '50s and '60s, and they would be maybe interesting from seeing an action scene standpoint. So I would see short periods of those films, but watching them all the way through, the style in which the stories were told and unfolded was very slow and boring. So I respected those movies from the technical standpoint of the technical accomplishment of what they were, which was the interesting part to view for a little bit. But I never really watched those movies and never fell in love with the Godzilla or King Kong or any of that because of the outlay of the story for me in that point in time. And then Godzilla movies that have been made during my lifetime have mostly been laughable and not anything that has drawn my interest. And we can see this with again with the Godzilla X Kong movie that just came out. When I saw it, it just looked like it was dumb and pointless. And then the reviews came back from those who saw and loved the movie, and it confirmed that it was just dumb and pointless based on their descriptions of the people who saw and loved the movie. So that was that. But with Godzilla minus one, there were a number of people who had various points of view that this was a really good film and a really well made film. So when I saw it that it was going to be on Netflix, it did draw my interest to take an opportunity to take a look. And what I found with this movie is that it is a movie made in the filmmaking manner of yesteryear, and the way that we have those who of us who love film have traditionally desired and understood film to be made. And I would note that this past weekend, we see that again the with Bad Boys Four. Whatever whatever interest one might have in that movie or not, we can see that where other movies are failing and failing badly right now, it came out and garnered an audience, a quite big audience at this point in time, overperforming the highest of its expectations by some millions of dollars. And note that this is a old franchise in the style of Hollywood of yesteryear and the movie making format that has been known, the buddy cop format, with the ways in which we are used to film being made before this current deconstructionist era of the past decade or so, where heroes and the whole concept of heroes, good and evil, making films about certain archetypes that have a certain pattern in a hero's journey and all those sorts of things has been eschewed for the ready-made righteous being who just appears, and often are these flawless beings who just show up and know everything to do. They're righteous in and of themselves. They're a hero because they're a hero, and being a hero is just what they do, and they're just heroic just because they are. And so, with Godzilla Minus One, I find a movie that takes us back to movie making as we would expect it, and I think that means something. So to really get into this analysis, let's go. So pronouncing these names is going to be, hopefully, I can stay on top of that. But let's get to it. Koichi is a coward. At first, I thought he was smart, swearing off false pride, not killing himself for a lost cause, just for an extrinsic sense of honor that he would never even be able to benefit from, or even get to bask in the glow of the honor, as he would be dead. But not long after, we find out that's not why he didn't go through with his duty. With the opportunity to save lives of a dozen cohorts, he refuses to pull the trigger of his 22 caliber airplane gun against Godzilla for no apparent reason. Even supposedly initially freezing, he could have started the plane, turned it towards Godzilla as he started to assault the men and do what he had to do. Yet, he sat there and did nothing. Then left the plane and simply ran away, just like he'd run away from his duty to kamikaze against the enemy. A pure coward. How can I root for a character like this? Nonetheless, Godzilla Minus One and Koichi draw me in over the course of the rest of the first act. A testament to the effectiveness of the approach of the filmmaking and storytelling in this movie. It gets to the heart of who the characters are, what these people are going through in post World War II Japan's bombed out urban centers. It sets character and their establishment as three-dimensional beings at the center of the film. This is what you get little of in most American movies anymore, especially not action or genre film. Another example of where this is done is Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. See my essay on why that's the one to see in the theaters while you still can at the link below or at my page at Reviews and Revisits. The cowardice that Koichi first shows sets up for an arc and a redemption story. The kind that lore filmmaking used to be all about before Hollywood's deconstruction of the classic hero archetype that we've gotten since The Last Jedi. The heart of the movie comes a little less than halfway through the second act. Koichi, why should I get the chance to live? Noriko, Koichi, everyone who survived the war, they all deserve to have a life again. Koichi, oh yeah, Noriko? And how would you know that? Noriko, because of my parents. Since they died in the fire, they called out and they said they wanted me to live. Whatever happens, whatever I do, I know that I have to survive. It's what's keeping me going. In quotes. Koichi basically then says he's not sure if he's alive. He can't just live because he believes his parents are calling to him from the grave. They're calling to him in his dreams to stop trying to escape death and accept his fate to come join them already, as he balls up in tears in Noriko's arms, she extolling him that he is alive. This is what's completely lost in modern Hollywood storytelling since about 2012. There are no flawless stoic heroes, nor perfect from the birth boss bees, unrealistic, unrelatable, and uninteresting as they are. None of the perfection and just show up to be a hero because you're a hero. None of what we've gotten over and over again in these last decade plus of our heroes being deconstructed, the concept of good and evil being turned on its head, as we're seeing with the Acolytes right now, the Acolyte Jedi show, where good is no longer good and there's no clear North Star and everything is gray matter and it's just from your perspective and what you feel. All of that has been what has been demonstrated to us in these last years. And Godzilla Minus One gets back to the classic format of filmmaking, especially again for genre film. This is what's completely lost again in the modern film making, but we're glad to get it back in this movie. Then our second act continues with classic Godzilla action, with the giant reptilian monsters stomping through urban Japan. With all the classic feel of the 1950s and 1960s Godzilla films I partially watched in the 90s, with the best in visual acuity of adept modern filmmaking. We find now that we have nuclear Godzilla. Godzilla has shot fire from his mouth before, maybe even lasers before, but this one seems to have a nuclear charge that starts in his tail and his spikes rise out of his back and a blue light begins to form up his spine and he powers forward with a blast out of his mouth of this blue atomic lightning, as it would appear, that just devours everything in front of it and has a blowback that's much like an atomic or nuclear bomb blast in the way that it sucks all the oxygen and pulls it back in and you see everything blow over. uh, due to these wind blasts. So it's almost as if during the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, some of that atomic or nuclear power somehow got embedded in Godzilla. There's no lore addressed about Godzilla and his powers, but we see that he does have this power. As we go forward with the film, we get further depth of character. The emotional paralysis of a warrior whose mission was never completed. Kyoshi explains why he hasn't moved on with his life even these couple of years after the end of the war. I couldn't, he says. My war isn't over yet. A very John Rambo-esque line. It's exactly what we want in our movie making. Without getting into what happens in the rest of the movie in specific, I want to talk about what the rest of the movie does. It lays out for you an arc of the characters, something that so many of these films don't bother to give us. They start with the character up here, and there's nowhere else for them to go. This movie gives us broad character development, plot line, a story that has an emotional core, as I've tried to recite to you from some of the lines and some of the scenes in the movie. It has just those elements that have always been the backbone of what make film worthwhile film. There's a point. There are people who have certain emotions that are being explored, and they have a journey to go on. They have a goal to accomplish. They have things that they have to overcome in order to move the story forward and for their lives to move forward. They face down their fears, but not because they have no fear, not because they're so strong, but because they must overcome their weakness. As Naoki said, to live, to have a life after the war. And some of them feel like they have one more war. They must save their people from Godzilla. And it plays out with, again, just adept acting, the adept direction. There was a couple of bad acting scenes, but that's okay. Uh, the movie has very well done cinematography. The action looks good. We're not overborne with a lot of thick laid on CGI with these thick CGI backgrounds. It doesn't seem that it's shot in the volume. It seems like we're looking over real lakes, and Godzilla is placed in there probably via CGI, I'm sure, but it's not an obvious overlay, and we get what we want in a well formed and well formatted movie. Godzilla Minus One takes us back to the movie making, the classic movie making that we appreciate and that we love. It is good to see that movies like this are being made. We hope that the director perhaps does get a Star Wars movie as he said that he wants. But then again, any Star Wars movie done under Kathleen Kennedy and Disney Star Wars is going to be no Star Wars. It doesn't matter who was brought in because the overlords will not let them make a real film. But maybe there's hope after all. And hopefully we can see more movie making like this. I am now a fan of this franchise, at least the Godzilla Minus One strain of the Godzilla franchise. I still would not go see a Godzilla X Kong or anything else derivative from that. But I am now drawn in. I want to follow the work of this director. I hope they bring more movies to the United States. And these movies are gonna be what's going to win people back to the theaters. Just as again, a movie that's made in the old format, the tried and true storytelling format, just like Bad Boys 4 was and did well in the theaters this week, mostly due to black and Hispanic audiences, but nonetheless, even what the white audiences still didn't get out there very much. We can see with Godzilla Minus One, we can see with how well Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is doing. It's not doing so great versus its budget, but it's doing as good as any movie has this year almost. I think it's the third highest grossing, third or fourth. And these movies that follow the format of tried and true storytelling, the hero's journey, that have thoughtful characters, that have thoughtful storylines, that have complexity, and that have people who are complex. Uh, are really going to do well. And they have an emotional core that centers the movie. And right is right and wrong is wrong. And people are fighting for what they believe in, not fighting to deconstruct what other people love or deconstruct what we've always understood to be good versus evil. I'm Lion Runner with reviews and revisits on YouTube and Instagram. Like me up here on this YouTube video. Check me out also on Instagram. Look down below for the link and look for some links to some of those other reviews that I may have brought up during this video review. Peace.